So let's say there's a file, or maybe some documents you want to send to someone. But you're thinking, well, how do I do that securely, especially if I'm sending it across the internet? Long ago, if you decided to send something from place to place, it was possible for bandits, or maybe even pirates, to intercept what you were sending. And even today, someone could physically intercept a package. Email, messaging, file transfer protocol, you name it. Almost any means of internet communication will have some possible intercept. Even encrypted communications, if intercepted, can, given enough time, be decrypted because computing power is so readily available, even to the average person. So remember, there's no absolutely 100% secure way to send information. There are only varying degrees of risk. Obviously, if you whisper your password to a friend in the middle of an empty forest, it's nearly impossible for anyone to know what you said. But the internet is one big copy machine that doesn't forget and is more analogous to posting notes on a billboard for everyone to see. You might be asking, well, what if I encrypt my files before sending? Then tell the receiver the password over the phone. The problem with this method is typically the password is the key that unlocks the file. And unless the password is extremely long and complex, a computer can eventually try every possible combination to unlock it. So what I'm going to show you today is a way of minimizing your risk when sending files across the internet. The premise is, by breaking the files up into chunks and sending them over different channels, it's very, very difficult for one entity to be recording both channels at the same time and then reassemble those pieces into something usable. In the same way I might send half a jigsaw puzzle over FedEx and another half over UPS, it would be very difficult for one individual to reassemble the puzzle back to its full glory. So if you're not familiar with encrypting or zipping or any kind of file archiving, then I highly recommend downloading this free utility called 7-Zip. It's highly performant and works very well on Windows. Now, if you're on a Mac, I can't really speak to what utility you would use, but it needs to be something that's able to, one, obviously encrypt files, but two, break them into multiple pieces in order to transfer them around. So hopefully you can follow along with whatever archiving utility you're using in order to get this done. So for this example, I took a file that I recorded last week that was basically a capture that was too short. So it's only 323 kilobytes. It's just too short and really not worth anything. But it's a great example of a file size that you might encounter when you're trying to send an encrypted file. The larger the file, the easier it is to break into chunks because of the way that 7-Zip already has these presets. But I wanted to show you along the way, what if you had a file that was, say, too small, but you still wanted to break it up? So we're going to walk through this now by right-clicking, going to 7-Zip, Add to Archive. And here's our parameter box where it already sets up a default name. I'm going to keep it at the 7-Zip format. I'm going to put the compression at its ultra level. So basically, it's obfuscating it as much as possible. So if you look down here and you see Split to Volumes, you'll see that the options are these presets. But for this file size, it's actually too small to fit around any of these. So what we need to do is basically come in here and say that for the number of bytes, I'm going to specify, because let's say we want to break it into 2, we want to break it into 3. It doesn't really matter. You just don't want to make it difficult to manage. So let's break it into, somewhere around 6 different pieces by saying 50,000 bytes. Okay. So when selecting a password for encrypting this file, it could be anything really, and it doesn't need to be anything really, really insane. But obviously, the stronger the password, the better. But for our purposes, we're just going to put an arbitrary word in here for now, and we're just going to use something that anybody could read, like the word blah. And now I'm going to go down here and click OK. And so it's going to ask me, are you sure you want to split the archive into such volumes? And I'm going to say yes. And there they are. So it took this file and broke it into chunks, right? Before I send it, I'm going to test to make sure that this works. Okay, and it emptied into this folder, and I have another folder called result, and there's my video file all nice and ready to go. So now on to the next phase, which is sending the file. Now, there are many ways that you could do this. You could basically send the first half over email. You could send another half over Messenger. It doesn't really matter, really, as long as you use separate channels. Now, I would even suggest sending, odd numbers over one channel and even numbers over another if you really, really want to get crazy, just to make sure that this puzzle is essentially shuffled up and isn't easily reassembled. You could even use 2 different email addresses, but I highly suggest using completely different mediums, such as one over email, one over like Facebook Messenger, or whatever you're familiar with or comfortable with. And obviously you want the other person to easily receive it. You don't want to be sending it over I use blah, blah, blah messenger from the planet Mars. And hey, dude, I don't got that. Oh, okay, well, that's not going to help you if you don't have the channel to be sending it through. And then once you've sent the files, then you can call that person and preferably say, over a phone what the actual password is. And then they basically assemble all of these files in one place, do exactly like I said, 7-zip, extract files. In fact, we'll just show how easy it is by deleting this file. Oh no, it's gone. And then we're going to go extract to here. And voila, there's the file. So it's definitely a little bit of extra work, but if you're really concerned about sending sensitive files over the internet, and you absolutely have to do so, this is the way to go. You need to make it so not only are the files encrypted, but they're hard to reassemble as well. And in some respects, you could even go much further. You could do double encryption, you could flatten the file. There's all these little methods that you could use to make it more difficult to bring these pieces back together. Or if per se that they got one of the files and were sitting there trying to unravel it, it would be more gobbledygook because it would just be a puzzle that doesn't fit anything and it just looks like garbage. So privacy and security are a very, very important topic for me. So I really want to spread the word around to people and give them new ways essentially to increase their cyber fitness, or at least cyber awareness, because this is a topic that's going to get more and more of a concern over time. And this is just one tip to kind of get people started in thinking about how crazy the internet is. And if we really want to protect ourselves, we can't really use the old, easy, lazy way of doing things, because those ways are what's getting us into trouble. So if you like this video, please give it a like. I will probably do more videos like this over time, but this is the one I really wanted to put out. And because it's tax season, I can imagine people trying to send files to their tax preparer or whatever that might be, and they're kind of wondering, well, wait a minute, I'm sending my social security number and W-2 over the internet. Isn't that risky? Well, it can be risky, so it's best to protect yourself as much as possible. And this tip I thought was very useful. And so before I go, for all the people out there that are new to cyber fitness, it's a really good idea to start thinking in the mindset of the internet is a very hostile place. And if you don't know what's going on, then you really don't know what's going on. So best to not take risks when you can. Again, sure, you can make phone calls over Skype, you can send messages, and for the most part, you don't have to worry. But there are certain things that you should make the effort to protect yourself. And so be smart, be safe, and we'll see you next time.